Hello, this is Jack from Nod to the Strange. I'm here with Tom.
Hello.
We are going to try something different and play a bit of Titan Quest and talk about movies. This week, Hereditary. There will be spoilers throughout. So I saw Hereditary about 2 weeks ago, and you've seen it, right, Tom?
Yeah, I saw it 1 week ago.
So we haven't spoken about this since we both saw it. What were your impressions?
Well, I really enjoyed it. I really liked it. I mean, I say enjoyed it. What I mean is it was a really good film, I thought. It was extremely stressful to watch, though.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Jaw agape for much of it, I'd say. Particularly a certain scene. I guess we're in spoilers straight away, so I'm going to jump to mentioning the decapitation scene.
Yeah.
Which my jaw was on my chest.
As soon as she started struggling in the back seat of the car and opening the window, you knew that something was going to happen. But when it did happen, I don't know what you thought, but I just thought her neck had been broken.
Well, we didn't see her head or body until the son, I can't remember his name, he had gone home and gone to sleep in shock.
Peter,
so yeah,
I think.
Peter. So there was quite a lot of ambiguity about what had actually happened after that moment, and I'm guessing that was intentional by the filmmaker, but I mean, I think it was pretty obvious she was dead.
It was the most shocking moment of the film.
Yeah, well, straight into the jugular then.
Something I thought was interesting was the trailer for it. I mean, the trailer that I saw, I'm sure there was more than one trailer, really kind of highlighted all the kind of modern horror ghost story type film moments, if that makes sense. So you had the bit where Peter sees his reflection in class and it's smiling at him, and the bit where he bangs his head on the desk and stuff like that, and some of the more Exorcist style bits in the film. And then when you went to see it, it felt really long. It wasn't actually that long. I think it was like 2 hours or something.
Oh, okay.
But it was very slow moving and drawn out and very different to what the trailer suggested.
Well, they got to get butts on seats, haven't they?
Yeah.
I mean, I think the scene of Peter looking at his reflection is one of, probably the most kind of cliched horror scene in the film. But yeah, it can attract a more mainstream audience. I guess people are expecting a James Wan style horror movie. But it was very much more, I felt, especially in the cinematography. I thought it was like a Kubrick film.
Yeah.
There was a lot of symmetry and very slow moving zooms, which was definitely reminiscent of The Shining.
Yeah, and it really felt like one of those films that is really influenced by that era of filmmaking, not rushing anything, really taking time to sort of build the characters as well. It was sort of like two films in one, really, wasn't it? There was a sort of the horror, supernatural stuff, and then there was also this sort of family drama about a family that was quite dysfunctional and hadn't been addressing certain issues and things for years and years, and it all started to come out after the death of the grandma.
Well, let's talk about the story as a whole, because I wasn't 100% clear on everything at the end, but my impression was that the grandmother was a worshipper of one of Satan's helpers or knights. And,
the 8 kings of hell were mentioned.
Right. And she was looking for a vessel, i.e. one of her grandchildren, for this spirit to embody. The boy, Peter, would have been a better option, a male, but she was estranged from her daughter at the time. So she was only, she was trying to, with the girl, to have this spirit embody her, but that wasn't good, so somehow they orchestrated the decapitation.
Yeah, there was they had that scene where they sort of revealed a lot of plot information really quickly when Toni Collette's character, I keep forgetting all the characters' names because it's been a few days. The
grandmother was Lee.
I think her surname was Lee and her first name was Ellen Lee. But Toni Collette's character finds those books in her mother's boxes, the cardboard boxes of her stuff, and one of the books says the demon king is called King Paimon, and one of the books says, remember, King Paimon is male, so he prefers a male body.
Right.
And apparently, I read like some bits of an interview with the director, Ari Aster, his name is, afterwards, and he said the girl, she was actually the King Paimon. Like, she wasn't possessed by him. She was like it was his spirit in a human body from when she was born.
Right.
And that's why she was always the grandmother's favourite grandchild and that kind of thing. Yeah.
Then we get to the question of why they wanted her decapitated. Now we had at the end we had 3 generations of decapitated women.
Yeah.
We had the grandma and then the mother. I'm just having a look at the cast list now. So we've got the son, he's called Peter. Toni Collette's character is called Annie, the mother, and then we've got Millie Shapiro playing Charlie. That's it. And then Gabriel Byrne is Steve. And then the grandmother, you said her name was
Ellen, I think.
Ellen, so she's not listed here, but so Ellen, Annie and Charlie were all bowed down and decapitated. Annie was taking her own head off, it looked like, when she was floating and stabbing herself in the neck.
There seemed to be a lot of kind of religious symbolism in it. The Trinity was mentioned, like the Holy Trinity. I think the grandmother's friend Joan at the end says, like, we reject the Trinity, and I wondered if maybe the 3 decapitations were sort of required as part of the overall ritual, because maybe they represented a sort of opposite of the Holy Trinity in some way. Yeah, I think there was a lot of sort of symbolism in it and things, and the decapitations were probably part of that. I mean, I felt like it was the kind of film where you really had to pay attention to everything in it, and I didn't leave feeling like, oh, nothing's been explained. Like, there's absolutely, I've got loads of questions. I felt like, mainly because of that scene where she finds all the books, it was, I think maybe they put that in as a way of quickly giving a lot of exposition to the audience in one go to clear things up, which I didn't mind really. It didn't feel cheap in any way.
I left thinking that that it was good and interesting horror film, but I didn't feel like I kind of ever need to see it again. And then I went to bed and I laid in bed thinking about it for quite a while, and I got really interested in it. I was interested at the time, but I got even more interested in the story later on as it kind of settled into my brain, and then I felt like I'll probably watch this multiple times in my life, because there's a lot that I missed, I think. I think I got the general crux of the story, but I feel like every it's the kind of film where every piece of dialogue is purposeful.
I did feel that a lot of how scary it was and how tense it made me while watching was down to the fact that I was seeing it in the cinema. I noticed a lot of like really good use of the surround sound in the cinema. There were things in the score as well, in the music, that seemed to travel around the back of the cinema behind you and stuff,
right.
Like certain instruments being played and stuff like that. I thought it was really well used, and I did think afterwards, if I had like watched that on my laptop in a well-lit room, it wouldn't have been half as effective probably.
Yeah, well, that would be your fault if that's how you'd absorb movies. There was a scene where I thought it was a little predictable, where Joan was saying, "Oh, I must tell you, I've had this brilliant thing happen to me," and she was all excited. I mean, I don't know about you, but at that moment I knew that she had gone to see a clairvoyant because of that letter there was through the door.
Yeah, and I think I kind of felt that bit was a bit weird, because obviously the junk mail thing was the kind of there's probably a technical storytelling word for it, but some kind of precursor to something that later happens in the plot, so that it doesn't come out of the blue.
A setup,
something like that. Yeah. But I did think it was a bit weird after seeing the film that we saw the flyer come through the door, so there was a clairvoyant show in town. But we later find out that Joan had probably made all that stuff up about her dead grandson, and the demonstration of they're not enemies the demonstration of speaking to him was probably all part of their evil plan, and it was probably she was speaking to some kind of evil entity that they were working with. So I did think it was a bit weird that the film establishes that there's a clairvoyant in town when it's just part of their ruse. Yeah, that guy's some kind of boss. Something I did like about it as well was that there was no ambiguity by the end. Like at the end of the film, it happens pretty literally, doesn't it? Like they do their ritual. Tony Collette's headless body floats down the garden, and at that point I was thinking, of course it does. It just became so crazy. Nothing was a surprise anymore, and I quite liked that, how it didn't leave you wondering like, but did it really happen, or was it all is it meant to be taken literally,
right?
As a story? And I think it was, which I quite liked.
I liked it. I think criticism I have, and I felt this when I was watching it, I felt after Charlie was decapitated, and I thought, okay, because it was slow up till that point, I thought, okay, things are going to really start kicking off now, because obviously I knew this was a horror film. And I felt like it progressed too slowly to the kind of final. It was like everything happened in the final 10 minutes. If you think about something like The Shining as an example, which is a sort of similar film in tone, it's like the whole third act is Jack chasing his family around.
That's true.
That's an exciting lot of tension, and I felt like the third act was really similar to the second act, and it just didn't get going till the very end. I could have done with a little more action and something more gripping happening before that point.
I'd agree with that. I know what you mean, because that I think at like 2/3 of the way through or half the way through, I started to get a sinking feeling, which wasn't justified as it turned out, but I started to wonder, is this going to be one of those films which just ends when it feels like the story isn't resolved? I don't want to say any other films because that would be spoiling other other films
Well,
without
say-
warning, but some films are really good at building up an atmosphere
Yeah.
and hinting at things, and then just as you start to think like it's going somewhere, it will get to like the 2-hour mark, and then it will just suddenly cut to the credits and leaving you feeling really unsatisfied. And sometimes a film can be good enough to get away with that, because I do think films are more than just about the plot.
Yes.
Like they are about like the mood and the atmosphere and the acting and everything. But I was starting to think halfway through this film, is it going to be one of those ones that just ends in a really unsatisfying way? And I'm glad it wasn't. I did like the literal ending.
Yeah, it had a resolution. It resolved on the side of evil, but that's not a problem in my book.
Yeah, it has a really horrifying, depressing, bad ending with possibly like an antichrist figure alive on Earth. But it did sort of set that up throughout the film by having the in the classroom scenes when they seemed to be studying like Greek literature or something, which I'm not an expert in. It sounded like they were discussing a Greek tragedy play, because they were talking about like the hero of a tragedy will have a dramatic flaw, which is something I remember from doing like Macbeth in A-level English at school. And all the events in the play will lead towards this unavoidable, unescapable, tragic climax to the story because of someone's tragic flaw. And so by sort of bringing that into the film, it sort of set that up for the ending to be what it was, I think.
You think it's probably echoing Greek tragedy?
Probably, yeah. I think that was part of it.
Going back to the trailer, I was pleasantly surprised that it wasn't the film I thought it was going to be. I thought it was going to be about a creepy little girl.
Yeah.
And she wasn't in the film by halfway through.
Yeah. I'm glad that wasn't spoiled for me. I was really, really happy with the film. I don't know at the moment what the director has done. I think I read he's done a couple of really good short films.
He's done short films, and this was his first feature, which is really impressive.
Yeah. I think he probably had a really good, experienced team of people working on it.
Must have had a great cinematographer and composer and so on. So, yeah, if you were to give it a score out of 10, Hereditary, what would you give it?
I think I would give it 8 out of 10, because I genuinely was really affected by it. It's difficult because I do think when you see a film, different kinds of films are meant to affect you in different ways. This wasn't one where you're supposed to, have some escapism, forget about real life for a couple of hours and walk out of the cinema feeling great about things. It was very different.
It was worse than real life.
Yeah. It did it really well. Made me feel really tense and uncomfortable.
Me too.
And I just felt like the soundtrack, all the actors were so good. I especially liked Gabriel Byrne as
He's
Steve,
always good, isn't he?
who, I haven't seen him for a while in anything, and he really kind of he came across as like this guy that knew that his wife had problems with her family and stuff like that, and that he seemed like he had been sort of just about coping with it all for years and years, and he finally can't take any more of it once she starts talking about possession and magic and things like that.
He's had enough, and kind of the moment that he realised that it was all true was the moment he got set on fire, and then it was too late. So I'd give it an 8 as well. It was a great looking film, and quite riveting. I wasn't so gripped in the second half, I'd say, until the final scenes. And I also didn't at one time I felt afraid for the characters, but I never felt afraid. It didn't have that horror effect on me that some films do.
Right.
But I enjoyed it very much as a film, and so yeah, there's a few points off for it losing a bit of the momentum and not scaring me.
I think, for me, the only part when it got sort of on the verge of being silly was at the séance that they do with the family,
Right.
in the middle of the night when they try and contact Charlie.
Let's travel south a bit.
Yeah, when the glass moved and the window smashed and things like that, it started. There hadn't really been anything that explicit in film up to that point. There had been the first séance, but it wasn't that extreme. I guess there was the writing with chalk on the chalkboard, but once things started happening in the second séance, I kind of felt a bit like this is verging on silliness. And I think that sort of comes from I don't know, the fact that in real life we know that the sort of Victorian craze for séances was just a massive scam, and it kind of hoodwinked so many people. Even like Arthur Conan Doyle got taken in by it. And so when we see things like that happening in a horror film and they're presented as being real, for me it's a bit hard to take seriously, because it's sort of like all the symbolism of it and the sort of cliches of it is just stuff you've seen before and you're not scared by because it's just known to be fake. Something I wanted to mention was after watching Hereditary, I got the urge to re-watch the Omen, the original Omen film, because it sort of reminded me a lot of that, with like a child being born and being the Antichrist. In the Omen, it's definitely the Antichrist, because they talk about it in the film. But something that was interesting with that, I hadn't seen it for 10 years or something, and when I watched it the other day, it was still a really good film. It was slightly cheesy in some ways, and had quite a few funny bad effects, like a decapitation with a sort of really bad looking head of David Warner, which didn't look anything like him, but it's fine. Something that I read about that film was that the director and writer decided to not put anything in the film that wasn't possible in reality. So I don't know how well you remember it, but lots of
it's been about 20 years, I think, since I've seen it.
So lots of crazy stuff happens in it, but it could all be down to like bad luck, like a priest being impaled by a lightning rod that gets knocked off a church roof by a bolt of lightning. It could happen. And an accident in a street involving a decapitation by a sheet of glass, things like that.
I mean, I've read news stories of that stuff happening.
And that was something that they made a conscious decision to do with the plot, was to make it so that you could watch it and say, oh, all the supernatural stuff was a load of rubbish. None of it really happened.
I think it's always nice to have some interpretation left open.
Yeah, and that's another way of doing that kind of story. I think there's been a remake of The Omen as well, but I haven't seen it.
It's passed me by.
I don't know what it's like. The Omen was really good in terms of kind of making these little suggestions that the boy Damien is evil. Like he goes to the zoo sees some giraffes and sort of looks at them, and they run away, sort of spook him. And then they go to see some baboons, and the baboons all start screaming and attacking the car.
Now, spoilers about the Omen. I can't remember, does the Omen die or get killed at the end?
Yeah, skip this bit if you don't want to know. But at the end, everyone dies apart from him, basically.
Apart from him.
Because he's adopted at the start, and it's implied throughout the film that a cult was working to place him with an influential family. The dad in the film, played by Gregory Peck, is the US ambassador to Italy at the start, and he later becomes the US ambassador to the UK. And so the film ends with the two parents being killed in different ways, and he is then adopted by the father's best friend, who is the president of the US. So it's implied at the end of the film that he's now possibly going to grow up to be, to be part of a really influential family in politics.
Right, which could be dangerous if he's the devil's son or incarnate.
Yeah.
Or so you were saying that everything could have been possible in reality in the movie, so you could view The Omen as a sort of story of a victimized child.
Yeah. Because there's even a bit where near the start there's a birthday party, and his nanny climbs onto the roof of the house with a rope around her neck.
I remember that.
Yeah, and jumps off the roof, and it turns out later that there's loads of tabloid papers are involved, and it turns out that she was on some kind of drugs or something like that. It's like casually mentioned. Someone says like, did you know she was on drugs? And so like even that could be sort of explained in an offhand way as being something that could be possible, although it's kind of a flimsy explanation.
Another film that came to mind watching Hereditary was The Orphanage.
I can't remember.
Have you seen that film?
Maybe I haven't seen it.
I think that's a fantastic horror film, and
Can you give
one of
really
the best I've ever seen.
Overview without spoilers of it?
Yeah.
Because I can't remember if I've seen it or not.
So, a lady and her husband move into an old orphanage where she was brought up as a child, and they adopt a young boy who has some health problems, and he goes missing. And that's probably all I should say about it. But it's just I think it's one of the kind of perfect horror films with great mystery, good resolve and satisfaction at the end, and pretty creepy, scary, and unsettling. Yeah, it's just really well done, and I definitely rank it alongside The Shining.
Yeah, The Shining is sort of similar to Hereditary in some ways, because there's the supernatural elements, but there's also a family drama going on as well. Can you remember there's one scene where, I can't remember who he's talking, I think maybe he's talking to the barman at the bar, and he says that I can't remember what it was now, there was some accusation against him that he had hit
I remember
Danny.
So Danny had come into his office and he was pulling at his papers, and he was trying to take them back, and the papers were flying around, and he hit him one goddamn time.
Yeah, so with that as well, it really is a sort of examination of this family having cabin fever, and all of everything bad that had ever happened in their family is sort of brought to the front again.
Amplified. in this small, well, it's not a small house, but in this enclosed space where they just have each other. Actually, Doctor Sleep has come out, which is the sequel, and I think it's being made into a film.
Oh, right.
Which is kind of interesting.
That has Danny, does it, from The Shining as the main character?
Not the same actor, I don't think.
Right, yeah.
But I think it was a bigger name actor who I'll put on the screen right now, since I can't remember.
Yeah.
But yeah, that could be interesting. Lacona Woods, you think we've been here?
It looks like we haven't activated the fountain here, but it's revealed on our map. It was off, it wasn't glowing.
Okay.
But this whole area is revealed on our map, so we probably have been here.
Okay, well, I think that's all we have to say. All I have to say about Hereditary.
I would recommend it to people who, love all kinds of films, not just ones that make you feel good, ones that make you feel terrible as well.